I've never paid random bullet spread that much attention. It seems like it's only recently become a talking point in the TF2 sphere, though a lot more subtle than the debate over random crits. Both mechanics have been thrust into the limelight as problematic by a handful of content creators, and then naturally that gets exacerbated by the circle jerk echo chambers that are Reddit, YouTube, etc, etc. The general complaint with both of these mechanics is that they make damage output inconsistent, and TF2 shouldn't have unpredictable mechanics that negatively affect the outcome of an otherwise predictable and skill-based game. That's the general idea behind it. This stance taken against random crits, I understand that one. Suddenly doing 3 times the normal amount of damage and obliterating your opponent without warning isn't exactly fair or skill-based. But random bullet spread? I've hardly noticed a difference between it and fixed bullet spread. It doesn't seem nearly as impactful or problematic as some make it out to be. So, that got me curious. Why haven't I noticed it? How impactful is random bullet spread inside of TF2? I wanted some answers, so I did a little experiment. Oh hey, what's up? What? You're serious? I just did this, and you're making me do it again? Are you dude, no, you can't be serious. Please, man, I can't get out of it? You're fucking serious. Motherfucker! Well, with that contractual obligation decided to appeal to the anime fans, as I was saying, I wanted some answers, so I set up a little experiment. The main complaint with random bullet spread is that it makes your damage output noticeably and negatively inconsistent. That's the hypothesis I want to test. So, I fired the stock shotgun at an engineer 1,512 times. 504 times at close range, medium range, and far range. I recorded how much damage each shot dealt, and ran statistics on the damage output. But before I dive into the results and do all the mathy shit people hate, let me explain the experiment a little bit. The stock shotgun was my test weapon of choice. I'm making the assumption that the results I get from using the stock shotgun represent all other shotguns. And, just for those unfamiliar, each shotgun shot has 10 pellets. When random bullet spread is off, these pellets are arranged in a 3x3 grid, with the 10th pellet overlapping the 9th in the center. There are 3 exceptions to this, however. First, the force of nature, which has 12 pellets instead of 10. 3 pellets in the center, 2 to the right of center, and the remaining form the rest of the grid. Second, the shortstop, with each shot having 4 pellets arranged in a weird T-shape. And third, the panic attack, which always fires a fixed 3x5 grid that is unaffected by random bullet spread. And for all shotguns, omitting the panic attack, when random bullet spread is turned on, 1 pellet is always 100% accurate, and the rest gets scattered in a cone of effect. Some of you might be thinking, why use an engineer as the test dummy? Each class has different hit scan hitbox sizes, right? So the amount of pellets you land will vary depending on what class you're shooting. Not to mention, their orientation relative to you and the angle at which you're firing also affect how many pellets make their mark. I opted to keep things simple, so I went with one class, the engineer, with a front-facing orientation, and I kept my crosshair as close as possible to his fucking jugular. The engineer has small hitboxes, meaning a smaller area to land pellets, so any negatives associated with random bullet spread should readily stand out when shooting at this smaller class, in comparison to, say, a heavy. And finally, as for the firing ranges, I chose approximately 256, 512, and 768 hammer units for close, medium, and far range respectively. These ranges roughly represent maximum damage ramp up, base damage, and maximum damage fall off. That's how the experiment was set up, so now, on to the results. Okay, let's start off small. Let's just look at the damage dealt at medium range. Here's what the data look like. We have the damage dealt by each shot, and how many times that damage was dealt out of 504. This type of chart is known as a frequency distribution, and I want you to take a look at the shape of this chart. It might be familiar to some of you. Ever hear of a bell curve? A bell curve illustrates what is known as a Gaussian, or normal distribution. It's often used in science to describe natural data, like human height, or test scores, breast size, or even the body mass of geckos. The majority of data is going to fall within a range near the average, located at the center of the bell. And this range, known as the standard deviation, represents about 68% of all collected values. What's really neat about the damage data closely fitting the shape of a bell curve is that this shows that random bullet spread is in fact random. We can at least confirm that the game works as it should, which is frankly a little bit of a relief. Diving a bit more deeply into our data. At medium range, the average damage per shot was 37, with 68% of our shots dealing 30 to 43 damage. At far range, we get another bell curve. The average damage per shot was 16, with 68% of our shots dealing 8 to 20 damage. And at close range, the average damage per shot was 74, with 85% of our shots dealing 72 to 80 damage. Okay, that's the experiment. We have the results. From this point forward, this video contains only my subjective interpretations and thoughts. So here's your obligatory and well displayed for those with weaker constitutions and those with small children that need to see themselves out. We have the results. We can again ask the question, does random bullet spread make your damage output noticeably and negatively inconsistent? For starters, let's just say that our expected damage per shot is the average. 68% of our shots fall within one standard deviation about this average, except for close range, for which 85% of our shots land within one standard deviation. But as a conservative estimate, just to satisfy the skeptics out there, let's just say that roughly 70% of our shots deal close to the average damage at any range. Here are the averages and standard deviations again. These ranges are fairly narrow, with the maximum differences amounting to what one could consider chip damage, only 1 or 2 pellets. Given the narrowness of these ranges, and that they roughly account for 70% of our shots, one could conclude that the damage dealt by shotguns with random bullet spread is fairly consistent most of the time. But is it unpredictable in a negative way? Well, roughly 70% of our shots land within the expected range of damage. That leaves 30% outside of that range, but half of those are on the high end of our bell curve, which is to our benefit. More damage is always better. So, about 85% of our shots, roughly 6 out of 7, deal close to the average, the expected amount, if not more. One could consider this fairly predictable, with a 15% chance at most that each shot could deal lower than the expected amount of damage, with the most noticeable detriment occurring at medium to far range. So as a general conclusion from this experiment, with random bullet spread on a stationary target with small hitboxes, there is a fairly consistent and predictable range of damage you should expect to deal, and a vast majority of your shot's damage will fall within this expected range or be higher. And if not, about 1 out of 7 shots deals significantly less damage than expected, screwing you out of the damage you should have dealt based on the average. Given these results, can one conclusively say that random bullet spread has a significant negative impact on damage consistency? Negative? Yes. Significant? No. So would disabling random bullet spread noticeably improve damage consistency? The answer to that one is also no. I pose this question to you. What damage should we expect a shotgun to deal? The exact same damage per shot on a target at a given distance, as one might expect from fixed spread? Or should a shotgun deal damage within a predictable range of values? Which of these is more realistic inside of TF2? Advocates for the removal of TF2's shotgun bloom often cite inconsistency as the main problem. Damage output in TF2 is very predictable, so on paper, this complaint makes perfect perfect sense. If I place my crosshair on a stationary target, I would expect to deal roughly a certain amount of damage, and not get screwed out of a blow that I know would kill my target. That's not fun for anyone. But it seems like players overly focus on this one factor of random bullet spread, because aside from this shotgun bloom, multiple variables affect damage consistency, including normal spread, damage fall off, ping, hitbox size, angle of approach relative to your target's hitboxes, the direction your target is facing, changing hitbox orientation, in-game animations that change hitbox position, and most importantly, your aim. Given all of these other variables at play, most of them out of your control, even a fixed spread shotgun should not be expected to deal the same amount of damage per shot at a given distance, even with random bullet spread turned off. One factor out of many removed, shotguns still deal damage within that same expected range of values, not a single value. And turning it off doesn't narrow down that expected damage range at all. Try it out yourself. You'll often find that you're missing a similar number of pellets compared to random spread, and that's the key result from my experiment. Random bullet spread only introduces that 15% chance of a shot doing significantly less damage than expected. And this percentage, in a real game, could either be exaggerated or retarded by these other factors at play. Yeah, I don't really get sponsors because I hate shilling crap I don't use for money, so today's sponsor is just me. You want to support me? Leave a like, leave a comment, or if you want to go the extra mile, I have a Patreon. I don't offer much, Discord access, bonus content here and there, so if you want to support me that way, it's there. Thanks guys, that's it, back to the video. In my time playing TF2 over the past decade, I've hardly noticed a difference between random spread and fixed spread, likely because of the other factors I mentioned. If there is a difference in active play, it's very subtle. In a hyper-idealized scenario like my experiment, the difference between fixed and random spread is night and day. But in real play, the removal of random bullet spread is likely a placebo. It's a mental thing. You might feel like you're playing significantly better, that your shots are more consistent, but in reality, the difference is likely so slight that it's statistically insignificant. Whether or not this could be objectively proven is another challenge entirely. And if that wasn't enough to get people's panties in a twist, here's a controversial take for you. Random bullet spread exists for a reason. It's an important balancing mechanic for pistols, revolvers, SMGs, and miniguns, obviously, because without random bullet spread, well, just imagine a hit scan weapon with 100% pinpoint accuracy at all times, but firing in rapid succession. That'd be a bit broken. But in my opinion, random bullet spread is also a crucial balancing factor for shotguns. It makes them behave like shotguns. Shotguns are more reliable at close range and less so at far range. It's also an important balancing factor for the scout. It keeps him in check. The scout's mobility lets him engage in close range fights, minimizing the effects of bullet spread in general and fully exploiting his higher damage ramp up. As the trade-off, he deals lower and inconsistent damage at greater distances. That's how he's balanced. Hell, I got curious if I was the only one who felt this way about random bullet spread, so I made a YouTube poll, and it seems like a majority of players only experience a slight difference, or no difference at all, between fixed spread and random spread. And many pointed out that the slight differences manifest at medium to far range. Man, what a shocker. What's more, ever since full-on random bullet spread was removed from CSGO shotguns, the difference in that game has been nominal. Disabling random spread has only made a significant difference at, guess what? Greater distances, as one might expect, mainly because CSGO players can now more consistently snipe headshots with a shotgun. Thing is, CSGO is a hyper-competitive game based heavily on skillful crosshair placement, where your target's head is going to be so you can land headshots. It makes more sense to remove random shotgun spread from a game like CSGO, where very minor differences in skill can have huge impacts on the outcome of a game.
Disaster! An absolute disaster!
But this isn't the case for TF2. The game isn't that sensitive. While minor shifts in crosshair placement do change your damage output, it's not by much. The 1 or 2 stray pellets caused by a random bullet spread don't significantly change the outcome of an engagement, let alone an entire game. The randomness in chip damage is just not that pivotal. I know this isn't the best justification, but the reason why random bullet spread isn't pivotal is because TF2 is a clusterfuck of different skill levels mashed together with a plethora of different class abilities. Hit scan, projectiles, knives, clubs, swords, fucking fire. It's a chaotic mess lacking the order, repetitiveness, sensitivity, and stricter predictability of a competitive game like CSGO, where random mechanics would have genuinely unfair influences on the flow of a game. Listen, competitively oriented TF2 players likely notice a bigger difference between random spread and fixed spread, because they primarily play their own watered down versions of the game, where things are made to facilitate a competitive format, to be ordered, repetitive, sensitive, and strictly predictable. Random mechanics are simply not welcome there. But for TF2 at its core, random mechanics were implemented by design, for balance. Like it or not, random crits exist to break stalemates. All of the side effects that people bitch and moan about largely boil down to an undeserved victory being granted to the worst player. Is the mechanic perfect? Obviously not. Do I like random crits? Only when they benefit me. Like it or not, random bullet spread exists to balance shotguns. Do I like random bullet spread? I do. It feels more right and makes more sense to have a shotgun behave like a shotgun rather than a waffle iron shooting grid thing. I don't understand why fixed bullet spread has become the expectation or even the norm in many community servers. There is this ever-growing outcry for its removal, alongside random crits. Rather, I do understand. Random mechanics are largely demonized by the competitive bandwagoners humping the leg of the prevailing YouTuber narrative. A vocal minority to be sure, but most people simply do not care. People didn't really care about random bullet spread until they were told to care. Random bullet spread isn't a problem, especially in the casual setting. I don't have a strong argument for keeping random bullet spread, but there isn't a bulletproof one for its removal either, aside from, accommodating that tiny minority of the player base. My concern is that if we start removing design factors like random bullet spread, like random crits, what have you, largely at the request of this minority, then we start pushing TF2 into territory where it doesn't belong. That's a topic for another day. Just to wrap things up, in the midst of TF2's chaos, random bullet spread does not have a significant negative impact on damage consistency. Random bullet spread exists to make shotguns behave like shotguns. People only complain about it when it's thrust in their faces and they're given a reason to complain about it. I think this guy puts it the best. If the difference between winning and losing is a few stray pellets, you need to stop blaming your gun and start playing better.
Die.